Today we're going to look at some advanced techniques for working with Mistrip in non-standard layouts. So when you're working with products like Mistrip, if you're dealing with standard perpendicular layouts, that is up, down, left, right, with no rotation involved, it can be quite easy to address just using the regions tools on the output page. But what if you want to do something a little bit more interesting? So we're going to look now at how we would create a circular Mistrip floor and how we'd place that in our output so that it can be easily read by the LED processor without any need for any sort of reassignment or reallocation. Okay, so a really important thing to remember with what we're going to do here is that 1 unit in our 3D application will equal 1 pixel on our output. So the very first thing we want to do, let's create a single strip that represents one of our Mistrip. So I'm going to create a plane first of all. Now this plane has come in with dimensions of 1 by 1. Now as I mentioned, we want to distort this to a Mistrip ratio, so Mistrip usually being something like 128 by 1. So the first thing I'm going to do in the tools subsection, I'm going to double press the scale so that I get the number boxes here, and then in the X I'm just going to type 128. So it's now given me 128 units wide by 1 unit high. Now another thing to be aware of is that the very center of our world here, this is the top left corner of our output page. So we actually need to get this piece starting from this center point and then all of our pieces coming from there. So I'm just going to double click translate and adjust that as necessary. So I happen to know that's 128 and minus 1 to bring this in place there. Brilliant. Now what we'll do is we'll UV map this one strip, then we'll duplicate it up and add as many strips as we need, and then we'll adjust our mapping so that each piece has its own individual mapping. So first of all, let's bring our UV mapping page open. So I slide the middle over. On the little white cube at the bottom, I'm going to select UV Image Editor. Now we need to make sure that we set this texture up to be the right size. I'm going to make it a full HD texture, so 1920 by 1080. Okay, cool. Then going back to my one on the left, I'm just going to give myself a good top flat view. I'm going to go into edit mode, choose the faces, which we've got, press U for UV, and I'm going to do project from view for now. Okay, so what we're also going to do, we're going to give this a really good center point. We're going to offset the piece from the center point, and then we can just rotate our extra pieces around that center point. It's going to make our life a lot easier. So the cursor marker here, when I left click with the cursor marker, we can choose a point, and that's what we're going to rotate around. But we actually need it in a very precise position. So if you just drag the little plus that's up here, if you just drag that over, and then just down here we've got cursor location, and I'm going to put that in the middle of my HD texture. So that's 960 by 540. There we go, so that's nicely in the middle now. And what I'm also going to do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to just adjust the position of this so that the center of my bar hits the center of the piece. So I'm going to just press G to move and then Y so that I can just move up and down. Something like that. And we will also give him a little bit of an offset on the X so that we've got a gap in the middle, like so. And then we're going to scale him down. Now it's important here that we actually choose the cursor marker as the thing around which we are pivoting or scaling. So down here on the bottom you've got a blue circle with a white bounding box around it. If you click on that one, and we're going to choose 2D cursor. So now I'm going to scale down. I'm going to press the S button. So press S and you'll notice it's scaling around that central point, which is really nice and handy. And I just want to get that roughly something like that. Maybe he wants to go out just a little bit more on the X as well. So again, G and X. Okay, something like that. So now that we've got our first piece correct, we've given it a good bit of UV mapping, we're going to duplicate this one, get in our extra lines, and then get them mapped on the output. And this might seem a little bit back to front the way I'm going to do this first of all, but bear with me and it will all make sense. So on the left I'm going to go back into object mode. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see. Then on my Tools tab I'm going to choose in the Modifiers drop down, I'm going to choose Array. Now we want the array to go vertically rather than horizontally, so we need the entry to be in the second box here. So the first one I'm going to put back to 0 because we don't need that horizontal offset, and I'm going to make them go down, so I want a -1 on there. There you go, so we can already see we've got our second panel has popped in there. Now I'm actually going to make 20 strips in this to make my circle, so I'm just going to increase the count up until 20. Like so. Okay, so now all I need to do is apply that geometry, and now when we go into edit mode we'll see that I can individually select those panels by right clicking on them, like so. So as we are at the moment, you'll notice that they've all got exactly the same UV position. Now what I want to do, I want to evenly rotate these around. So what I've done is I've actually calculated this in advance. I've got it on a piece of paper in front of me. Now I've got a total of 20 strips. There are 360 degrees in a circle, so I believe that means every 18 degrees I want to have another of my strips. So it's really easy. Now that we've set this center point up as well, I am going to bring that little window open because sometimes I find myself accidentally changing my center point, and it's really useful just to be able to make sure that you can go jump back in and just change it to what it should be. So I can right click on the specific components and choose a certain part. So I'm going to choose number 2. Then with my mouse on the right I'm going to press the R button for rotate, and then I'm going to type in the amount I wish to rotate. So R and 18, 1, 8, and then press enter. Cool. So again, select my third one, R, and this time it's 36, enter, R, 54, enter, R72, enter. We've got R90, so we're a quarter of the way there. And we've got R108, enter. We've got R126, R144. I'm pressing enter after each of these, obviously. R162, enter. R180 and enter. R198 and enter. R216 and enter. R234 and enter. Almost there. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. There we go. So select that one. So R252 and enter. R270, enter. Almost there. R288, enter. R306, enter. Last two. R324 and enter. And then R342 and enter. And so now if I select all of those components, we should see, there we go, so we've got our lovely laid out circle. I see that I've made my components very slightly too big there. I'm going to just scale it down for now. There we go. Very little bit of scaling there. Maybe I should have been a little bit more accurate on my setup at first. Okay, so now essentially we are there. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to export this as a model. So this is the model that is going to control the output position. So we're just going to go export 3D Studio, and then I'm going to save that to the relevant place. Put it into my models folder, and we're going to call that circle floor output 01, and we're going to save that. And so next what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump in and I'm going to make a new project, and I'm going to create a model for the visualization. Okay, so let's make the visualization part. So first of all, I'm just going to delete the existing cube with the X button, and I'm going to get rid of that camera as well. So delete that one. So I'm going to add a plane. Again, we're going to give him that 128 by 1 scaling. At this time, I'm not too worried about it being to size because it's purely for visualization, this one. So we're going to scale in there, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put 1.28 by 0.01. So that gives us that same ratio. Let's just zoom in a little bit, and I'm just going to offset his position there, like so. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a circle. We're going to make an array from our original plane, and then we're going to apply that circle to the components of the array so that they curve around in a circular fashion. So let's add the circle. So it's in the Create tab, and we're going to go down to Circle there, like so. And then next what we want to do is we want to throw in the array on the plane. So I'm going to select the plane, then on the Tools tab I go to the Array modifier. So again, we don't want this to go in this direction, we want it to go in that direction along our green axis. So I'm going to take the take the 1 off of there, put that one into A1. There we go, like so. We had 20 components, so we've got to make sure there's 20 in there. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just put a bit of a gap in there just for now, and then we're going to increase the spacing when we apply the circle. So what we need to do now, we need to add another modifier. We're going to add a curve modifier this time. So what we can do with the curve modifier, we can come onto this object drop down here, we can click on there and we'll see our circle is already shown. Now when I click that, you can see it applies the circle, but it's not quite the right dimension, not the right axis for us. So if you click through them, you'll find that one of them is going to give you a better layout, like that one there. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to just bring this in a little bit. So I'm adjusting my starting point there, as it were. And then I'm just going to adjust the spacing so that I have a nice evenly spaced set of units, like so. Okay, that looks great to me. So then we're going to apply the array and apply the curve. And all we need to do now is just give ourselves a good top view, and then we're going to UV map this. There is a little bit of distortion on there, but I'm really not worried because this is purely for my visualizer. The other model that we made is actually defining the output positions for me. So let's just bring that over just a little bit more, like so. We'll go to our UV mapping page, UV image editor. Again, I'm going to make that the same texture size, so that was a full HD texture, 1920 1080. There we go. Then on the left, I go into edit mode, choose my faces, make sure they're all selected by double pressing A, then U for UV, and project from view. There we go. And I'm going to just scale that one up just a little bit so that it's pretty much the same size as the other one. Okay, so that's great. So I'm then just going to export this model, and this is going to be the model that we use in our 3D visualizer. So again, we're going to go Export, 3D Studio, go back to my Models folder. The one I did now was Circle Floor Output. So I'm going to call that one Circle Floor Output Viz 01. And we're going to export that, like so. Okay, so now let's step over to AI. Okay, so now we've done the majority of the work, all we've got to do is bring our models into AI and get them functioning with the project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to head straight, I've got a screen fixture here obviously, and I am going to head straight to the output page, up here. And now along the top of the output page, on several of the fixtures, we have this 3ds import box. Now this is specifically designed for the task we've just done, where we've determined our output positions based on the model and the UV map. Now when I load it in, it will make a lot more sense, so don't worry if it seemed a bit sort of back to front up to this point. So quite simply, let's first of all in fact make sure that we have the same texture size. I made an HD texture on the other one. So 1920 1080, like so. There we go. So let's go to our output page again. There we go, brilliant. So if I just click on the 3ds import, it's going to let me allocate that model to this. And what we should hopefully see, on the left we should see the strips in the circular form, and on the right we should see them laid out correctly as we would expect to send these to a processor. So click the 3ds button. We go to my own folder. I've got one just here. Into models, there we go. So we're going to load circle floor output here, and then we'll use the visualizer model, which will drag onto the fixture so it looks good in our visualizer. So circle floor output, there we go. So you can see already it's actually, let's see if we can maximize that a little bit. There we go, you can see it's got those layouts, and if I click off of those points, we can actually see those strips here within the output window, and we can see that there, if you remember when I did my placement of these strips within Blender, I said that our center point in our 3D world was our top left corner, and so that's why I made those planes from that point. So you can see it actually is really easy once you understand it. It's a little bit reverse first of all, and now if we just go back to our main page there, and we can actually import our visualizer model as well. So I'm going to go back to my browser, and then in the section there I've got a models folder, and then within my models folder I just need to load that one up there. That's my visualizer model, like so. So if I zoom in, you can see really nicely now that it's showing all those components on there. And so that's a really quick and easy way to work with non-standard setups for output systems like Mistrip.